By breaking into a tomb, the robbers were gate-crashing the afterlife. This was a daunting prospect.
You don't know where you are. It's pitch black. And you're scared. You're terrified. You are in the presence of a dead king. You have in the tomb not only a decomposing or decomposed body, but all the food that has rotted away. You may have animals that have burrowed in there and that have died. So there's a smell of a stench of death.
Deeper into the tomb, the intruders would face the guardians of the burial chamber. Some believed these life-size statues had supernatural powers. They could put a curse on anyone trespassing in their master's tomb. Once in the burial chamber, the robbers found what they had come for. Gold. Vast quantities of it lay all around. Egyptologists can only speculate how much each tomb originally contained.
The guesses are wild. I have heard figures from as much as 1/4 ton of gold to 100 tons of gold.
But this metal could be hard to get at. Much of it was embedded in wooden artifacts, and most of it was hidden inside the king's heavy stone sarcophagus. Evidence from ancient papyrus records reveals that some robbers went to extreme lengths to get their bullion. They torched the tomb. By melting the gold, they would be certain to extract every last ounce of it from the tomb. But in the process, they would be turning works of art to cinders, and risked committing the ultimate sacrilege, destroying the king's body, and with it his chances of surviving the afterlife. With so much at stake, any tomb robbers caught would be sure to suffer a gruesome fate. Thebes, 1090 BC. A royal tomb robber has just been apprehended. Ancient court records shed amazing light on how such trials were conducted.
The examination was held by beating their hands and their feet with a double rod.
The crime was seen as so important that even the pharaoh attended. Records show how one prisoner cracked under torture.
Stop, I will tell you. We took the coffin and set fire to it in the tomb.
If you're found guilty, you're put to death. And the form that this takes is impalement. It's a very slow and a horrendous way of killing a prisoner.
The year of the hyenas marked a turning point. The valley was no longer a safe resting place for Egypt's rulers. Turning their backs on 500 years of tradition, the pharaohs abandoned the Valley of the Kings. With no more tombs for the royal craftsmen to build, Deir el-Medina became a ghost town. Priests came to the valley to open up every royal tomb they could find. Most of the pharaoh's mummies were moved to a new home, a small cave outside the valley where no robber would think of looking. For 1,000 years, the valley had been sacred and deathly silent. But not for much longer. Egypt was invaded by a succession of foreign armies. The Assyrians in 670 BC, then the Greeks, and finally the Romans. In the wake of the armies came legions of tourists, eager to visit the legendary valley.
It was a big deal to go to the Valley of the Kings. You know, it was a big trip. And when they went to the valley, they wanted to record that they were there.
They did so by gouging out thousands of graffiti from the pristine walls.
I, Philastrios the Alexandrian, have seen with my own eyes the work of these tombs of astounding horror, and have spent a delightful day.
We, Iasios and Sonesios, saw 6 of these tombs and were extremely impressed.
My heart was enchanted by what I saw, so I wrote this. Marcus Litus was here.
But the damage inflicted on the tombs by ancient visitors was nothing compared to the devastation caused by the forces of nature.
Once every couple of 100 years, you would get a torrential rainstorm on the hillside above the valley, washing hundreds of thousands of tons of debris down and doing serious damage to the tombs.
You get water rushing through the valley, bringing down boulders, and the whole thing would be flooded.
You can imagine the effect on a tomb with millions of gallons of water pouring down the corridors, stripping off the painted decoration, removing the carved reliefs, and simply filling the tomb up almost to the brim.
Some storms could be so severe that the Valley of the Kings was transformed into a lake. Over the next 2,000 years, tomb after tomb was concealed by flood debris. But all this changed in the early 19th century. In just 10 months, 8 tombs were discovered by one man. The Italian, Giovanni Belzoni, had given up his job as a circus strongman to become an explorer in Egypt. On first inspection, the Valley of the Kings seemed to have little to offer.
There were a few tombs open, but there was an awful lot of rubble covering the valley too. And he was poking around with rods, iron rods, looking for tombs, and he found some.
October 16th, 1817. Belzoni stumbles upon an incredible find. The tomb of Seti I, who had been laid to rest 3,000 years before.
Belzoni sometimes gets a bad press because of the techniques he was using to enter tombs, sealed tombs. For example, battering rams, which tends not to be a technique which is employed very much nowadays.
Belzoni was the first to step foot inside the tomb, since robbers had looted it almost 3,000 years before. As he noted in his diary,
I may call this a fortunate day, one of the best, perhaps, of my life.
Reading Belzoni's diaries, you can tell the man was absolutely ecstatic. Nothing like this had been seen. No European had been in a tomb in which such vivid detail was still preserved on the walls. And as Belzoni was to discover, it also is one of the largest tombs ever found.